Brothers and sisters, Black Power is always giving honor to the Creator, giving honor to the ancestors. My sister, Chief of Staff, Brother Harris Abdul, my father, my in-laws, and all of my subscribers and followers and listeners, and all that are fighting for the liberation and salvation of our black nation. First, what I want to talk about today is the betrayal that existed and that still exists in the black community today. How deep that it runs and how damaging and detrimental it has been for our liberation and salvation. And I hope you can follow me on this and you can get a better understanding of how important it is that we must not allow provocateurs, agents, rats, and snitches to continue to infiltrate and destroy our movements and our leaders that are fighting for our liberation, that have fought for our liberation, that has been annihilated by this devil. And these niggas that have worked side by side with the fucking cracker, with the enemies, to destroy our black leaders and our black warriors and scholars and gods and goddesses. This ought to make you feel like trying to do something to make a change. And it doesn't matter how long ago or how recent. An agent is an agent. These niggas that collaborate with the enemies, are for the pure destruction of the black race, thinking that they'll be spared. But let's get started. Fred Hampton, who was the Chicago chairman of the Black Panther Party, who was ambushed in his sleep by Chicago pigs in the middle of the night in 1970. 69 or 70, I believe it was 1969, with the help of agents who put a sleeping agent into the pitcher of Kool-Aid that wouldn't allow Hampton, Mark Clark, and several others that were in that house that night, that early wee hours of the morning, to respond to the heavy gunfire that the Chicago pigs initiated on those brothers and sisters. And Deborah Johnson, who was Fred Hampton Sr.'s fiance at the time, was carrying Fred Hampton Jr., and she was wounded as well, but managed to give birth to another warrior, an extension of Fred Hampton Sr. One of the agents was this nigga Bobby Rush. And this is what I tell you all. These niggas that do all this talking and they call themselves going on the motherfucking police and, barking real loud. Those are the motherfucking niggas you have to watch out for. And Bobby Rush was one of those niggas that did all this motherfucking talking to the point where he was trusted by Fred Hampton and Mark Clark to provide security in the house, in the safe house that they were staying in which he played a major role in the demise of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. How else can you become a councilman, alderman, and a councilman? Now, this was a fucking Black Panther, and after the murder of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, now all of a sudden he becomes a government fucking politician. and this dessert plate ear, puffy nose, pug nose son of a bitch, Bobby Rush, who is still in office today, selling out his people on a daily and consistent basis. Whitney Houston, Clive Davis, who played Whitney Houston, became a billionaire off of Whitney Houston. And then when Whitney became caught up with her own personal struggles, Clive Davis set up another sister and made her do some horrific shit to prove her loyalty to him and the music industry and the record company. Clive replaced Whitney with her, Jennifer Hudson, who sacrificed her entire family to be the next Whitney Houston. And Clive Davis played one against the other. And what happened was, when Whitney was upstairs, she was murdered. And this goddamn devil, Clive Davis, continued to have the Grammys in the same hotel, the same building that Whitney lied dead on the floor for 11 and a half hours while they were downstairs performing the ritual, which Nicki Minaj performed the Ascension ritual. And Clive Davis allowed Whitney to lay upstairs 11 hours while they were downstairs having a fucking party. And this is how the devil operates. And Jennifer Hudson, who is a slut, who can't be trusted, because anytime you agree and sacrifice and murder your mother and little children and your sisters, you and your brother, you're nothing. You're nothing. And she done all of that to prove her loyalty to these goddamn demons. And Clive Davis, along with Ray J, participated in the demise and murder of Whitney Houston. Michael Jackson and Sony. When Michael Jackson spoke out against Tommy Mottola and Sony, after generating billions and owning half of the company, he was targeted for termination. And here he is with the devil, Tommy Mottola, who sent his goons into Michael Jackson's house, where Michael Jackson was beat to death. He didn't die of a propofol overdose, because the bloody shirt was found by the sheriff of that town, and by him not revealing that he had found the bloody shirt, he was given a job at the CIA in Langley, Virginia. However, Michael Jackson, the crime scene was set up to appear that it was a propofol overdose, in which Conrad Murray agreed to keep his mouth shut. He was threatened that they would kill his wife, they would kill his children if he opened his mouth. And so he did the 4-year sentence completely quiet and he was in solitary confinement throughout the whole duration of his prison stay. Omarosa, the opportunist, the slut, the bed wench to Donald Trump. She saw an opportunity where she could use her body to take every penny and all the royalties, money and assets and home of Michael Clark Duncan, in which he died mysteriously. Now it's quite funny that he was healthy powerful weightlifter, ex-NFL football player, and then all of a sudden when he meets Omarosa, he mysteriously dies. And Michael Clark Duncan's sister is on Omarosa's ass because she knew that Omarosa had something to do with the demise of her brother. And mind you, and may I tell you this, that Omarosa ended up with everything that Michael Clark Duncan ever worked for and ever had. Chris Kelly from the group Crisscross, when he revealed to the public that he, along with his they were like brothers, Crisscross. Both of their names were Chris. They were very, very tight. They were just like brothers, and they were being, excuse me, one second. They were both being sexually violated by Jermaine Dupri, in which he paid an out-of-court settlement of $12 million to avoid going to jail. And Jermaine Dupri is a pedophile. He is a pedophile. He is a homosexual. And his marriage to Janet Jackson was just a cover-up to make it appear that he was heterosexual so he could still attract new and young artists without them thinking that they would have to perform or go through any type of sex ritual to get a record deal, which they still do. But Bow Wow, The Brat, all of those are homos and lesbians. Ricky Smiley, that whole clique, that whole entire clique down there performs, and they dibble and dabble and they engulf themselves, especially Bow Wow, him and Omarion and several other homosexual and bisexual men. They are really entrenched in this homo, bisexual, lesbian triangle ring that they have going on down in Atlanta. And so Jermaine Dupri paid $12 million out of court settlement to avoid doing prison time for sexually violating both of the brothers that made the rap duo Crisscross. However, Jermaine Dupri didn't allow Chris Kelly to walk and found out that Chris Kelly was dibbling, dabbling in drugs as a way to deal with being a victim of sexual abuse. And he was found murdered. He was found murdered. And the cause of death was supposedly been an apparent drug overdose. But according to witnesses and people that were at Chris Kelly's house earlier that day, stated that he showed no indication of being over intoxicated whatsoever, and that he was visited by several unusual people through Jermaine Dupri. And so you can put two and two together. Damon Dash, Rachel Roy. And in order for Damon Dash to move up the ladder, he had to prove his loyalty not only to Jay-Z, but to Rick Rubin and the rest of the Def Jam, Russell Simmons, and this Rockefeller clique. And in order to get the funding to be a CEO of Rockefeller, he had to do some things that resulted in the murder of one of our favorite queens. in the music industry at the time, which was Aaliyah. Now this fabricated engagement that Damon Dash had with Aaliyah was real to Aaliyah, but not to Damon Dash. This was another one of his hustles, and nobody saw it coming. And so a lot of people were fooled by Aaliyah dying in a plane crash, but they did not. They were not aware that the pilot ejected himself. The plane went on remote control, and no passengers were on there except for Aaliyah, maybe two of her roadies, and a I believe two musicians that perished in that plane crash. But they had the plane was in autopilot without them knowing it, and that was Damon Dash's claim to fame, because right after the passing of Aaliyah, the murder of Aaliyah, Damon Dash became a hip hop mogul. Created the Rockefeller Empire. And see, you all need to put two and two together and understand what takes place in this industry. How quickly, when tragedy strikes, you always have to look at who benefits from these tragedies and these murders. Who benefits? That's the first thing you look at. And it's ironic that Damon Dash, after the murder of Aaliyah, he just blew completely the fuck up and became CEO of Rockefeller, which was ultimately taken back by Jay-Z, and they pimped Damon Dash. When they found out that he was doing a deal with Suge Knight, Irv Gotti, and Jay Prince to open a black major distribution deal, and Jay-Z went back and told the so-called white imposter Jews of the music industry, that's when they snatched everything back away from Damon Dash. And now he ended up working for Jay-Z. This click here, Bernie Mac, Cedric Entertainer, D.L. Hughley, Steve Harvey. And as you can see and look in the eyes of Steve Harvey, you can see the hunger and jealousy and hatred that he had for Bernie Mac by having to play second fiddle to one of the greatest comedians that ever lived, which was Bernie Mac. The world only had a glimpse of Bernie Mac. And what happened when Bernie Mac was chosen over Steve Harvey to play in the Ocean's 11 movie, Steve Harvey went public stating that it should have been him, and this is when the fix went in. And it is said that when Bernie Mac was on the set of a movie with Ashton Kutcher, that personnel from Steve Harvey's camp went into Bernie Mac's trailer when Bernie Mac was not in the trailer, and apparently his oxygen and his medication was tampered with, which led to Bernie Mac having going into cardiac arrest. And Steve Harvey was a phony motherfucker at Bernie Mac's homegoing. Very phony motherfucker. He's the type, he can think about something and bust out crying, and it doesn't even have to be what you think he's weeping about. He's a phony motherfucking coon. And I don't have to say that after the murder of Bernie Mac, how Steve Harvey catapulted to where he's at today. Cedric the Entertainer, he's a major coon as well, but he is too heavily melanated, and so he gets a part here and there. He may do a sitcom on primetime television, but that's it. D.L. Hughley, in fact, became a very, very conscious brother, although he's alpha, and he's boule, but you will never tell because D.L. Hughley doesn't give a fuck these days. And he goes hard and he speaks his mind. I really respect D.L. Hughley in a lot of ways. But we don't have to be a rocket scientist to put two and two together to know that it came up 4 when Steve Harvey rolled the dice after Bernie Mac. Dr. Martin King. Dr. King had so many haters around him that it was pathetic. With the exception of Ralph Abernathy, everybody that was around King were in on the assassination or knew that it was about to happen. And they knew who was going to do it. To this day, they still haven't talked. But one person that it was clearly obvious that Dr. King hated, as you can see, he didn't trust him. He said he was an agent and an opportunist, was Jesse Jackson, who in the book Orders to Kill, written by William Pepper, who was Dr. King's attorney, that a lady, Ernestine Campbell, a white lady, that was driving her Cadillac past the Lorraine Motel on April the 4th around 6:15 p.m. and stated that she saw Dr. King laying down on the ground. She thought he had a heart attack, but she saw Jesse Jackson coming up the steps, putting something that resembled a shiny silver handgun in his tote bag. And so I don't have to go into all that because you all know from my previous videos what I had told you about. Judge Joe Brown did the ballistics and found the King was shot with a rifle and a handgun. And so, Jesse Jackson was an opportunist, and he lied so much on Dr. King that you have to go and do your own research and find out the things that Jesse did in terms of participating in the murder of Dr. King. That's Jesse standing on the balcony with Ralph Abernathy, the only one that he trusted. But Ralph Abernathy, he wasn't, no prayer book either. Tupac Shakur, who the government, the FBI followed Tupac since he was in junior high school. It's almost a 2,000-page dossier that the FBI has on Tupac Shakur. And Tupac was a threat to national security because he was going to reinvent the new Black Panther Party. And the Bloods and Crips had agreed to become Panthers. So membership would have went close to 1 million people, 1 million brothers reformed. And so the government needed to get rid of Pac. And so they used Snoop Dogg. He played a major role in the murder of Tupac Shakur. Followed Tupac to Vegas. And if you look at the All Eyes on Me movie, you'll see where Snoop was asking Pac, was he going to Vegas? He wanted to make sure that Pac went to Vegas. And so um, they weren't even speaking when they were on the Source Awards because Snoop had teamed up with the East Coast and left Pac hanging. And when Snoop was in trouble, Pac was a rider for Snoop. And mind you, Snoop Dogg has had a couple of murder charges. He smokes weed anywhere, any place, anytime he wants. And who do you know that's an ex-gangbanger, an ex-crip that becomes a game show host on primetime television and can literally do what he wants to do? Because for his participation in the murdering of Tupac Shakur, these crackers gave Snoop Dogg the world on a platter, which is crumbs to the cracker. But Snoop has never went to jail. He eluded Suge Knight and Hall Dash, like I mentioned before, under the nuts of Master P and hid, fearing for his life. He has extra heavy security to this day. And he is a cold bitch. Cold bitch. Here he is with Martha Stewart. And Martha Stewart has more heart than he does. Because Martha Stewart at least had the balls to go to prison. Snoop hasn't seen the inside of a jail. And this is someone who's had a couple of murder charges. And if the cracker gives a gangbanger a job hosting a game show, you know this motherfucker has to be hot. But it's all catching up with him. It's hard for him to sleep at night because he knows the fucked up shit that he has done. He doesn't even look the same anymore. He's worried, he's confused, he's sick, and so on and so on. So fuck him. Fuck him. Notorious B.I.G. We all know who set him up to be murdered. Someone who he claimed was his best friend, P. Diddy. And in order for P. Diddy to catapult his career, in which he was also jealous or hater of Biggie as well, because Biggie took the spotlight, took the shine from Puff. And so P. Diddy having that feminine energy that he does, wasn't hard for him to create a jealousy and hatred for Big. And so what he done was agree with the FBI to have Biggie Smalls murdered. And he would not be prosecuted for his participation. That's why there were no shots fired back when Biggie was shot in the truck. Now, I'm quite sure that there were plenty of weapons in those vehicles. And why wasn't this brother chased when he got into his car? Why wasn't the car chase ensued? Why weren't no shots returned? It was all a setup. And we all know the history of P. Diddy. After the passing of Biggie, P. Diddy, his career skyrocketed. So you got to pay attention, brothers and sisters. You got to pay clear attention. Now, let's talk about some brothers and sisters that were conscious, that were warriors and revolutionaries that were murdered. Brother Darren Seals who was leading the charge on retaliation for the murder of Mike Brown in Ferguson, who was being harassed and terrorized by the Ferguson police along with his brother. But he did not stand down. He did not back down. And ultimately, he was shot several times, ambushed by police in his truck, and his truck was set on fire. Dick Gregory, who was a complete vegetarian, who was in great health, went to the hospital for a checkup and never returned. And so I believe he was given an injection and he was taken out because Dick Gregory began to clear his conscience and began to talk and had the cracker shook because Dick Gregory is an alpha, he's a boule too. However, it is said that he could have possibly have been an agent as well because he is a man that never had any security. So you have to question that. But nevertheless, he was murdered as well. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, murdered. Suffered 2 strokes at home in her bed. But the reason these strokes were possibly induced by an intruder working for the DC government is because they wanted her to move out of the house. So these wanted her to sell her home so these so-called white imposter Jews can build a playground and demolish her house. She personally gave me a petition which I had acquired several signatures on my paper, paper that she gave me. And you know, sometimes we forget to guard and protect our elders and our leaders. And this is what happened with Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who I knew personally. Dr. Sebi, who had the cure for everything, had become a threat to the system of racism, white supremacy. And so what happened? Bogus charges were drawn up on Dr. Sebi in Honduras. And he was arrested, acquired pneumonia, and was murdered in jail. So we got to get to the bottom of these allowing our leaders to be murdered like this, and our elders. And he was tormented. He fasted the entire time that he was being detained, but he was force-fed. And somehow he ended up going into cardiac arrest. No investigation of any kind was conducted to find the culprits and people that were truly responsible, because, you know, the trail leads all the way back here to the United Snakes. Steve Coakley was murdered in a California, Los Angeles hospital. He had mentioned that the second time when he was going back to the hospital the second time, that he will probably not be coming back, because the first time Steve Coakley stated they attempted to kill him the first time. And Steve Coakley is he is the greatest researcher that the black community has ever seen. I have personally never met or heard of anyone close to Steve Coakley. I believe Dane Calloway, it will probably be the closest thing to Steve Coakley, but he will never be a Steve Coakley. We would know nothing about the Boule, secret societies, or any of that if it weren't for brother Steve Coakley. So may you rest in power, brother, and which I knew him personally as well. The General, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, who was the most ruthless revolutionary leader that was uncompromising with the devil in all forms. Dr. Khalid was a tactician. He was very, very highly intelligent, highly conscious, highly committed. And his murder stems from his wife and people inside of the new Black Panther Party. As well, the Nation of Islam could have possibly played a major role in the demise of Dr. Khalid as well. And we have to be honest and tell the truth instead of tiptoeing around and acting like sissies, you know, and biting our tongues in terms of what we feel, in terms of what we discover in our own personal research. So we have to at least do that for, you know, our heroes and sheroes that have been taken out of here. And so, you know, I hope that you got something out of what I just shared with you all. Because once again, I try to do my best and do as much investigative research and journalism that I possibly can. I'm not one of these brothers that proclaim to be this out of this world scholar, you know, that knows everything, that I'm the magnificent so and so and all of this. I'm just a regular, conscious, strong warrior, leader that wants and will fight and will continue to fight for the liberation and salvation of our black nation. And we have to all stand up, stand straight up, and represent all the people that I just mentioned. Represent your family, your people, your ancestors. And in closing, I'd like to say that, you know, I hope my Queen Nzinga's having a good time on her spiritual retreat, traveling, you know, traveling the waters right now, outside of the country, you know, and hopefully she'll bring that strong, positive energy back. And, you know, we wish her a safe return as well. So, until again, my brothers and sisters, once again, I hope you got something out of this. And as always, Hotep, Black Power.